Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, Europe. Good morning, Chanda. Good morning, Dennis. Good morning, Amos. And good morning, Oz. And first, as usual, and hello to all viewers. I hope you enjoy our show today. And nice you're with us. And I would like to start with Chanda. How are you doing today? And how was your week?
You guys, thanks so much for having me on. I'm super excited. Normally I watch you guys while I do my Saturday morning routine. So it's exciting to be here with you guys. Boy, what a week it's been. I live just outside the Seattle area. So of course we've been deep embroiled in what's going on in Seattle, and of course the chaos in our country and in the world. And so I'm excited to sit down and talk with you guys about it.
Yeah, thank you, Chanda. And Amos, how are you doing in New Jersey? Amos? Can you hear us, Amos? Okay, Amos cannot hear us. I would go over to Dennis. Dennis, how are you doing?
Morning. I'm pretty fine. Nothing special happened the past week, so I'm excited to do the show. So let's go on.
All right, okay. I don't know if Amos can hear me now.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, you can. Okay, Amos, how are you doing? How was your week?
Well, it was, the usual. It's trying to not be overly depressed.
Yes, okay, I can imagine, yeah. Well, my week was a German week. We don't have to deal with all the stuff you have to deal with. And we have a full-packed show today. And for this, I would like to start directly and jump back in history and go back to 1971 when the Pentagon Papers were published by the New York Times, and all the incidents which happened around this, and it was the first time in which it was discussed, and not only discussed, it came to Supreme Court in how far the public should be informed about what's going on with wars, etc., especially in this case. And it referred to the Kennedy and Eisenhower era, but Nixon wanted to prevent all this, that anything would be published, because of course he did not want to make a first case, and maybe had to fear that something dirt comes up which would also be published. And so he tried to prevent all this, and later they installed a special unit in Washington which should fight any leaks that any news would come to journalists. And those guys became famous as the plumbers, and those guys later broke into a hotel room in the Watergate Hotel, and this finally led, as you guys know, to the demission of Nixon, his resignation. And it was quite interesting. And I was asking myself in how far this would be possible today with Trump in charge, that the press, we saw this, everything which is happening around Trump and all the accusations, and nothing seems to have any impact. And this was a time, I guess, when journalism counted, and I think it was also a very different kind of journalism than we are seeing today, especially in the mainstream media, where it is mostly entertainment and not about news or to inform the people, and this is now, if you go back 49, 50 years ago, nearly, and it all changed into a very, very bad direction, what journalism concerns and what accountability concerns. And we should not forget this, right?
Yeah.
Guys, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'd like to add something.
Yes, please, Chana.
I do believe that we do have this level of journalists right now, but the problem is they're not in the mainstream media because they're pushed out. I mean, we have Max Blumenthal, we have Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi. Well, he's kind of working in the mainstream with Rolling Stone, but they try to get these stories out. But look at Glenn Greenwald; he's been pushed out of the country. He's literally, living abroad now because
Ed Schultz before he died. There are many.
Ed Schultz, exactly.
Yeah. and this is why it is the mainstream journalism. This is exactly what the people are still viewing, especially in a certain age, that you still only count on what is presented on your TV, and you take this for granted what people tell you there. Be it Fox News or be it CBS or CNN or MSNBC, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dennis, do you want to add something?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is since 1996 with you guys know what I mean, the bill and the law that Mr.
Telecommunications
Clinton,
Act.
The Telecommunication Act, or what?
Thank you. Exactly.
Right. Okay.
When the whole reducing began, really, or what I would say, the last nail in the coffin, where it ended when real journalism, not even only in the US, but around the world, ended because more and more power got to big news corporations. And what is the main goal of a corporation? Make money. Therefore, they're closing all bureaus. For example, for 30, 40 years, you had in every major city, bureaus, journalists, people who got out stories and so on. Now, thanks to the internet, they're just, go online, Google it, and that's it. But there's no real journalism anymore.
Yeah, and exactly. And if you can put on the slide you just have, Oz, because this is very important, I think. No, the other one you just had. The slide 6, exactly, slide 6. Exactly. And there is a point, they oppose that the public would know about the documents, the interna, to prevent further erosion of public support for the war, and if you know that war means money, it is all about money, and you see that the public, that the Americans or everyone, I don't want to exclude my government also, that mostly we are kept in the dark, and this is also something we should not underestimate.
It's really hard to imagine at this point that things would change unless independent media can take its place, because the source of the problem is the funding. And just like you have these calls to defund the police, unless the funding source is not the incentive any longer the way it is now, commercial mainstream media will continue to push the lines that are advantageous to the elites or to the power structure. So I think that's a good point for you to all pitch in and donate and support us.
Yes, exactly.
Support independent media.
Yes, independent media is. We saw so many lies in the mainstream media, and well, you cannot trust them, and so this is important. You should. My advice would be listen to the mainstream media, but get all the other sources also around, then you got the whole picture, and then you can see behind the curtain, maybe, that why a mainstream media agency is doing this and that, and why a certain a message is not reported by a certain medium, right? This is also a point, it is not only the narration about an incident, it is also if you at all report about it.
So, and just to say, we're not only talking about the US. Here in Germany, there are 6 families who own everything, every paper, any TV station, and so on. So we have the same thing here in Europe, and especially in Germany.
At a certain point, yes, but we don't have to deal with all the other circumstances the Americans have to deal with. So this is not something which is catching fire, in the public conscious,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Just want to say that we don't.
No, you're right. You're absolutely
sound like we are only bashing.
No. Of course not. Of course not. We will talk about this also later when we talk about the cops. But before we are doing this, Dennis, I would like to go over to your part, and you have something interesting to talk about Jane Elliot.
Yeah, especially around this time, Jane Elliot is the first name I go to when I have really hard questions about the whole theme about racism and color blindness, like some people say, or ignorance. She's a real educator. And here's an example, a short clip where she's doing her exercise in an auditorium.
I want every white person in this room who would be happy to be treated as this society in general treats our citizens, our black citizens. If you, as a white person, would be happy to receive the same treatment that our black citizens do in this society, please stand. You didn't understand the directions. If you white folks want to be treated the way blacks are in this society, stand. Nobody's standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
So here was a perfect example. This is the question she's stating out at the end of her exercise. So the whole base of Jane Elliott's fame, to say, is she got a phone call when Martin Luther King died. She got a phone call from her sister, and her sister told her, "Do you know they killed him?" And she was like, "Who? When? What?" Yeah, and then she heard for the first time that Martin is dead. And the next day, she decided that she would divide the class based on the color of the eye. For example, she divided into the brown-eyed people who had darker eyes and people who had lighter eyes, blue or green or whatever. And she started to treat them differently, like we in societies do treat people differently because of something they have no control over. They are born with it, so they can't change it in any kind of way. And within 20 minutes, when she was doing this, she was, what would I say? It hit her in her heart, in her soul, because she knew in this short period of time what she can do with his children, meaning they were nasty to the other people. They were monsters, like you say. And after this experience, and when she did this exercise, she started to develop a program and then toured around the world to show other people what it means, what it is to be a racist. This is a learned thing. It's not nothing that you are born with. And when I saw this for the first time, I've looked at myself and thought, I have no prejudice. I am fine. I treat everyone like everyone and so on. But after I saw a whole session of hers, I was like, oh my God. I catch myself that I was also ignorant, and I don't know. I would suggest to everyone, look at the clips. They're on YouTube. I put a link down on this today's show where you can go to her website and find further information. But if every class, every school, and everywhere around the world would go through this exercise, I think the problem of racism as an idea, it's a construct. We've invented it. It all started 500 years ago with the Spanish Inquisition, because they couldn't differ between Jews and non-Jews and so on. And they started to say, okay, you are black or you're darker skinned, so you have to be a Jew, and so on and so on. And therefore, I don't know. I would love to see this kind of exercise be done in every school, so that we start with the children, so they understand this is nothing. It's totally fine to be different. It's totally fine to look different, have another culture and so on. Just get out of ignorance. And she's the perfect example what an educator, a teacher is really, and not like how today, like you're drilled in a certain way to say, like I was like when my teacher said, okay, you have to be perfect in math and so on, to be this and that. No, it's okay if you're interested in art or whatever. It's okay, then go with it. And I don't know. Yeah. Oh God, I'm starting to cry because now.
No, you don't. You don't need to cry. I would like to add. If I may, I would like to add something about what happened to her when she did those exercises. At a very early point, when she did this, some kids reported it at home, and at that point, she was done in the society. She was. The parents did not want her to school their kids anymore. She got thrown out of her job as a teacher. Her parents lost a complete business. Her children were spat at, and she went through a big pain, and she's also saw what a society can do, and she experienced somehow firsthand, what it means to take a side for someone, at that time. And I think she is one of the examples who clearly has a backbone, a fascinating woman in my opinion, and very important. And I think the experiment she did with her students there, and nobody stood up, everyone was and is aware that they don't know what it means to be a black person, but they know for sure that they don't want to be in their position, in their shoes. And this says it all, right?
Yeah.
Channa, Amos, anyone to add?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I was raised in a very racist household. My stepfather was Aryan. So it does start with the children. My mother constantly countered his rhetoric, like, no, you can't think that way. No, we're all equal. And so growing up, the seeds were planted in there. So of course I'm very aware of it now, but Americans don't like to look at themselves in the mirror. We don't want to admit these things. So even if you get them to admit it, they shame it, they put it down in a box, and they just refuse to address it until we get more people to address it. It starts with the youth. I do believe that it's really our children that are going to change it.
As a German with our history, can say it is painful.
It is, yeah.
And we would not have been confronted with our history, with our 13 years of history, the really, really bad years, without having been defeated. And that, I think, is also a point, And history is written by the winners. So why should you question yourself, right? But you see at the point where you are at now, and it is, I don't have any solutions for this, and it would need a complete mind change, but this doesn't. There is no switch to set it up to do a new setup, right? Wow. Amos, do you have anything?
I completely agree.
All right. Okay, thank you, Dennis. I think it was very good and very important, to remind us about Jane Elliot and her experiment, her exercise, and we go on now. We go on now to our card for today, and for those who did not quite get it, I got to explain it. When I woke up this morning and I checked YouTube, the new political videos. I did not have even 2 sips from my coffee, I started a certain video, the video we are going to see now. Also, if you can start it and then go on later. With this clip 2, please.
Good afternoon. 375 million interactions with the public every year. 375 million interactions. Overwhelmingly positive responses. Overwhelmingly positive responses. But I read in the papers all week, we all read in the papers, that in the black community, mothers are worried about their children getting home from school without being killed by a cop. What world are we living in? That doesn't happen. It does not happen. I am not Derek Chauvin. They are not him. He killed someone. We didn't. We are restrained. And you know what? I'm saying this to all the cops here. Because you know what? Everybody's trying to shame us. The legislators, the press, everybody's trying to shame us into being embarrassed about our profession. Well, you know what? This isn't stained by someone in Minneapolis. It's still got a shine on it. And so do theirs. So do theirs. Stop treating us like animals and thugs and start treating us with some respect. That's what we're here today to say. We've been left out of the conversation. We've been vilified. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Trying to make us embarrassed of our profession. 375 million interactions. Overwhelmingly positive. Nobody talks about all the police officers that were killed in the last week in the United States of America, and there were a number of them. We don't condone Minneapolis. We roundly reject what he did as disgusting. It's disgusting. It's not what we do. It's not what police officers do. Our legislators abandoned us. The press is vilifying us. Well, you know what, guys? I'm proud to be a cop, and I'm going to continue to be proud to be a cop until the day I retire. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah. As I said, I had not even 2 sips from my coffee. And hi, Dennis. And I could not get what I was seeing there. I don't know why Dennis is on.
What?
All right, okay. But his reaction, yeah, okay. I could not get what I saw and what I had to listen to. And my first impulse was, this sounds exactly like those guys from the Flat Earthers, you know, completely outlandish, completely out of reality. I was asking myself, from which planet did he come from? Completely neglecting anything which happened, not only the past now 18 days, but the months and years and decades before, and just turning the game around and playing it out like the cops are now the true victims of it all. And the second thought was, it was great that he made this video, and your applause was just justified, Dennis, because this guy, he helped the movement to defund the police and to make a new system based on the communities available or possible. There was no better service this guy could do. But then the third thought came into my mind. There was before another message, not long after I saw this video. And this was a cop coming from New York, of course, who sent an email to his colleagues apologizing for not standing the ground and kneeling alongside George Floyd protesters. And if you look at his email, I think it is crazy. I know I made the wrong decision. We did not know how the protesters would have reacted if we didn't and were attempting to reduce any extra violence. The conditions prior to the decision to take a knee were very difficult, as we were put center stage with the entire crowd chanting, he wrote. So it was, as we as most of us already assumed when we saw all the photos or footage about cops kneeling with the protesters, this was only a pose and nothing more. And more proofs come up, and when this came up, it was not only 14 days since George Floyd was murdered. It didn't take them even 14 days to stay silent. No, they're coming out and crying like babies. I think this is very cheap. But as I said, I think this helped a lot of more than any protest, because this unmasked the attitude of those guys, I think. Right? And then I wanted to check, let's forget about the stupid cop from New York. I don't want to extend it. The next thought of mine was, how are they ticking? What are cops thinking? In what role do they see themselves? What is how they see themselves in society and in their job? And then I found a Pew Research, some very interesting statistics I found there, and it was crazy. The statistics say so much about how police works, and it is the cops are, in my opinion, is a country in itself, if you want, so a society living in a society, right? Because they are so far away from reality, what the public thinks and feels about them or experiences with them. It is crazy. And if you see here, for example, the statistics, officer, it is only if there are high-profile incidents involving blacks in police. Officers have become more concerned about their safety, 93%. Officers have been more reluctant to use force when it is appropriate. The question is, in the first place, what is appropriate? What are they referring to? What is appropriate? Next, interactions between police and blacks. Can you go back, please? Interactions between police and blacks have become more tense, 75%. And I cannot get this. If you look how heavily police is militarized, and it is crazy. What kind of threat do they feel in the end? I know that there are also victims on police side, that also cops are killed. But I think the one thing reasons a bit the other thing also, and but they are living in their own world, and I found out in my research, if you look at the unions, because this guy we saw in the video was Mike O'Mara. He is the union leader of the cops in New York, and in general, the unions, the police unions in America, are to a high 90% percentage held by Irish cops, by white Irish cops in the top positions. And it is very, very hard for any black cop who is qualified, and who has a different perspective maybe on what's going on. They even don't have a chance to get in those positions, And there's later statistics where they also ask black police officers, and they can see clearly that black officers who go to police, with the intention to do something good, to help the neighborhood, to make police maybe look different, they cannot escape the system. It is impossible for them. They are brainwashed. They are in parts by the daily behavior. They know in the end how they have to react according what is positively sanctioned by the colleagues and chiefs. And even if they disagree with what's going on, they know it has no impact. They have no power to change anything really, right? And this is also in the statistics. And if you look at this, I think there is no other possibility than finding another solution, another system. Of course, you would need police, but police should not be in the streets when it is about homeless, about people who have a drug addiction, etc. They should be there. but they should not be in charge. They should be only there to secure, only to secure, and then call the experts, social workers, doctors, etc., and they have to deal with the incident, and they have no authority to deal with these incidents, And this is why I think it is a good solution to defund police and put the money to demilitarize and defund police, and put the money into the communes and in the social work. I think this should be the first steps which should be undertaken, and also this should give by the time maybe trust to the people or to the communities, that they see things are changing to a better way, because it cannot go on like this. It is impossible.
Marcus, with
Yes,
your point, I would ask Shander and Amos about this.
Exactly.
How are the regulations in your state, or particularly in your town and so on? Do you guys have civil oversight committees who have power, or are they just there for show, or do you guys even have any?
I think he's
Amos, you're muted.
unmute.
Yeah,
No,
you want to
Shan-
go ahead, Shanda?
I'll let Amos go first. Go ahead, Amos.
All right. Well, I'm not aware of any oversight committees in New Jersey. What I do know is that they did a version of defunding by wasn't exactly defunding, but they moved to community policing in a couple of troubled cities that used to be a point of friction, and that has worked out pretty well on the whole.
Yeah, we don't have any oversight where I live. I live in a police state, meaning that there is one police officer to every 3 residents in my community. So
What?
I literally can only drive 1 mile and I'll pass 2 or 3 police officers. We're a retirement community. I think that has a lot to do with it. A lot of people from California have moved here. But the one thing that really struck me about the police officer, the union guy, he demands respect. You will respect us. You don't demand
Yes.
respect, you earn respect, and they're not earning respect. And I live in a small town. I see the chat talking about, well, there's good cops in small towns, they don't last very long. That is not true. They protect each other, and they are allowed to continue. We saw this with Chavez. I mean, he had 19 citations that nobody ever did anything about because he was protected by his brothers in blue. We have a racism problem in our country, a systemic one, but we also have a police brutality problem. And when you couple the two together, they've ignited, into this huge fire. And these police saying, respect us. Oh, that wasn't us. Those were Minneapolis police. I beg to differ. That was New York. Eric Gardner was killed on the streets of New York, and he too screamed, "I can't breathe." So, this is a coast to coast problem in the United States. To say that it's centralized to large cities is incorrect.
I totally agree. And there's actually a short video of Trump making statements yesterday that goes into that and kind of dovetails with this cops outrage. And while you're queuing it, it's basically, the problem is that I can imagine that there are many policemen that do not have particular racist point of view, and there are probably a lot of policemen that are not brutal psychopaths, but the point is that it's much wider than that. It's cultural and it's systemic. And in a poll that they did a few years ago, they found that over 70% of rookie policemen said that there was a code of secrecy, and a very high percentage said that they saw things that were done that were improper, and they never complained about it. So to kind of like shrug off and say that they're not to blame is kind of playing playing Pollyannish. But let's look at the video that Trump spoke about.
Instead, we have to go the opposite way. We must invest more energy and resources in police training and recruiting and community engagement. We have to respect our police. We have to take care of our police. They're protecting us. And if they're allowed to do their job, they'll do a great job. And you always have a bad apple no matter where you go. You have bad apples. And there are not too many of them. And I can tell you there are not too many of them in the police department. We all know a lot of members of the police.
Yeah, so repeating that kind of like a point of view that it's just a few cases that that need to be called out, and otherwise everything is hunky-dory. I think the majority of the population is not there anymore, and I think he is like clearly showing how out of touch he is. And frankly, also Biden, he recently said that they needed to fund the police more, and I'll get into that in my segment, but there's kind of like a disconnect there.
Absolutely. Well, you know, they say this bad apple analogy, but say if I have a bag of apples and one apple is rotting in the bag, they all start to rot.
Exactly.
And from which tree came this bad apple? Yeah.
And if you put it from the start in a rotten bag, you know, then you can forget about it all. But anyway, we're talking only about America. There is one thing which is also important, which is coming up in our country, in Germany, you know, and also, of course, the George Floyd murder and the protests were received here. And last week we also had lots of protests here in Germany. And of course, the question came up in how far is the German police racist, you know? And it was very interesting to see the reactions from the ministers of our countries, of our country parts. And you can say we have 16 states here in Germany. There are, I think, 16 ministers of the inner, which would be your state of secretary of state, interior, yeah. And everyone said no, we don't want to do this because we have no racial problem in our police. It is not needed here. They didn't even want to start a discussion about it, a debate, you know. And I thought to myself, you know, if you're so sure, you guys, that there is no incident, which is absolutely not true, there are other things which prove the contrary, then when you're so sure, why aren't you not so open, you know, and allow the discussion? No, because otherwise there's something to hide. And there is something to hide in Germany. We know this, that there are several connections to several groups, you know, Dennis, like the identitary group and other right-wingers. And we have this also, and we also have the cop culture here in Germany, not at this extent, I would say, but if you have the culture in your police, then you have it, and it doesn't matter much to what extent it is, you know, because it starts somewhere and it ends somewhere, and it is only loyalty, and it's the same spirit, you know, and we also should check our police also, I think.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
But it's not only the police, it's also the army and so on and so on. The whole thing.
Private prisons, you know, it's a market. You need those guys in jail so they produce the products for all the big companies so they can spare their hunger wages, spending in India or somewhere. So they got an asshole who even gets less money than them, and they make their profits from it, you know. That's the culture. That's capitalism.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah, in a nutshell, exactly. Yeah. Chanda?
Pretty much, yeah. I agree with everything you said. Absolutely. You know, our private prisons, they're making lines like Victoria's Secrets. You know, some of the #1 brands in the country are made by private prisons.
Yeah, and if you got Netflix, you can check it. I think it was The 13th, is a documentary about exactly what's going on. And it was... I think I knew about some stuff, you know, but this was eye-opening what I see there. Who is producing? Who is on in the boat, you know, of all these big corporations? And this is, in the end, this is slave work. Period.
Yep.
nothing changed, you know? Yeah. Anyway, okay. I think this is a topic we could deal in another show, because this fills evenings and nights and weeks, I guess, to talk about this. But we don't have this time. We go over now to Amos, and he tells us why we cannot rest. You're muted?
Sorry about that. Well, everybody's well aware of Floyd and that incident. There's other recent events that have happened, even after the protests have started, that are maybe less known. And I wanted to bring the attention to some of those and show that it's just basically an ongoing thing. And we really can't let go at this point, even if changes in some degree have started happening here and there, or there's a public debate. I think the pressure needs to go on. So the first case that happened was Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, and she was gunned down in her own home on March 13th. And basically what happened was there was police that suspected that drug dealers were visiting her apartment. They came early in the morning. She was an EMT worker that kept working during COVID, trying to save lives. They broke in plain clothes, drew guns. The boyfriend, Breonna's boyfriend, was startled. He thought it was a break-in, and he shot his gun, injuring a policeman in the arm, and then they just sprayed the room in bullets. They killed her. She probably didn't even wake up. I don't know if she woke up, but that was what was the story with that. After that, there was the case with if you move to the next, Michael Ramos, who was gunned down in Austin, Texas, in front of his home on April 16th, and that was done. Well, let's watch the video. There's a video, short video that was taken off it, and then we'll talk about it. It's basically he has been accused that he hasn't complied with orders, but he's stood in front of his car with his hands up and said, I'm not armed, and he may have been in shock from whatever, or was it people shouting at him or whatever. Not everybody can, like, if you all of a sudden had like a line of weapons drawn on you, I don't know how coherent you'd be or responsive. And he basically got shot with a beanbag, what they call the beanbag ammunition, which is not a live bullet, but it's something similar. He probably thought he was being shot at. He entered his car and took off. The girlfriend jumped out of the car in last minute. They chased him, shot him. He crashed into a car and died. So you want to show that video?
Well, back here at home, some members of the community and Austin City Council are furious after yesterday's officer-involved shooting in southeast Austin. It started after someone called 911 to report a man doing drugs and holding a gun in the air at an apartment complex parking lot near Pleasant Valley Road in Old Torf. When officers arrived, police say the suspect got out of the car but wouldn't comply with commands. Now, this is viewer video of the incident. We want to warn you, it may be disturbing to watch. Austin Police Chief Brian Manley said that's when one officer fired less lethal rounds from a beanbag shotgun before the car took off. He also said officers began forcing entry into the suspect's vehicle a minute later by firing a deadly shot, causing the car to crash into a parked vehicle. Austin police say an officer used less lethal force when the man would not comply with their orders. That's what I just told you. Members of the Austin Justice Coalition said the situation was not handled properly. Chief Manley said all officers are trained in how to use less deadly force and how to de-escalate situations.
I humbly believe that.
Okay, so so basically, no arms were found in the vehicle. So that's the other case. There's a third case with a guy. This happened a couple of days ago on June 1st. And that is David McAtee in Louisville, Kentucky too. And in this case, today they announced that they found out that the bullet that killed him was a National Guard bullet, which is it was a military grade weapon bullet that hit him in the chest. He's a guy who had a barbecue stand. There was a protest nearby. There were people gathering in front of the barbecue eating, as is customary. And the police thought that this was part of the protest. They descended on it, trying to disperse the people who were in front of it. And as they rushed in, weapons drawn, somebody, according to their claim, has shot, and they responded, shooting him dead. He was feeding policemen during the riots, during this whole period. Real nice guy. So it's very unfortunate as well. And so we see that this is like an ongoing thing. Even the way they responded to protests, especially in Austin and other places, was way out of line, and it just indicates how important it is to do something about it. So the question is, do we? There's been calls to defund the police, and both Biden and Trump have gone the other way. And I think most people don't understand that what's being talked in terms of defunding. What does that mean? It basically means moving some of the funds that are funding police to other ways of addressing issues that the police is currently dealing with. So the arguments that they are making for continued funding of the police is first that it's going to allow the police to step up training, and second that these additional funds would fund the reform. The arguments for defunding, on the other hand, are to start decentralizing police role in public and law order, and that's basically if you have somebody who's mentally ill right now, the police is addressing them, and they've done a lot of damage in that regard. They're not necessarily well trained. Sometimes psychotic urges when they just see it as an opportunity to beat up or kill someone who is defenseless. And moving that to somebody else's domain, like a psychologist, emergency team would probably do much better. It also is said that if you fund more housing, if you fund more extracurricular activities for youth and so forth, that by itself may reduce some crime. And also the increased funding of alternative means it's a very important thing to undertake on its own. The last thing is that it usurps the current power structure, which blocks reform. And the reason why they did attempt doing reforms in various parts of the country, and that's been blocked by a very powerful police union. And that the fact that there is such a powerful structure behind it that is preventing addressing it means that we have no choice but to dismantle the current system and build a new one, or bypass it almost entirely, in order to force these reforms, because they're rejecting those reforms. So it's basically the police's own doing that we're at this moment even discussing abolition or defunding. And I don't know, frankly, what it is going to be called. I mean, it could be called police, community policing. I don't care if it's even called police. the point is that a whole new power structure has to be brought in so that these underlying existing corruption does not affect it.
I have a question for you guys, especially it's now after this. I see in the last 5 to 6 years here in Germany that the funding for community centers for families and youth and so on is reduced and reduced and reduced. The same situation, I guess, is in America also.
Yes, very much so.
So when I say, I would also say defund the police. What I would say is defund it in that way so that they don't have the militarized graded weapons anymore, just like, or looking like an oppressive force, like I saw with Ferguson, or even with this protest. It's like they're invading. It's like you're in the middle of Baghdad. That I would say that you structure the whole thing new, and the money you get out of this, to put it like Amos said, put it where it really needs, because you prevent further crime if you intervene earlier, meaning give people hope and something to do, so they are not really, what would say, it's like the devil and the angel on your shoulders, like that the angel always has something to do so the devil doesn't take you over. It's a phrase that my grandma always used to say to me, so it's a really nice phrase to put it in here. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's all I have to say about this.
You're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear Marcus.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, I muted myself. Well, I said my part regarding defunding police, and I think you should do it in regards to the communities, the needs of the communities, and what they're trying in Minneapolis right now. Chana?
Yeah, and I agree 100%. Defunding to me doesn't mean abolishing the police. I think we'll always have some form of police, no matter what you call them. But what we need, to do is exactly that: reallocate these funds, start putting them into the community, start putting them into mental health, and we need to stop this surplus of military grade weaponry that is being sold to all of our small town police. I mean, in Seattle 4 years ago, they wanted $54 million to build a bunker so they could do tank maneuvers in the middle of Seattle. And we had a campaign called Bust the Bunker. We sat outside the city hall for weeks, and Shama Sawant actually went to the police station and inspected it and said, no, you guys don't need $54 million for this. And we actually got some of that funding to go to housing, because Seattle has such a terrible homelessness problem just because of gentrification and the cost of living in Seattle. So yeah, defunding doesn't mean like, oh, just no more cops anymore. It means change how we are implementing that money to the police.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
And also, I'm big support of reform around the training. It's just horrific to hear that you guys, that anyone can go there. Hey, here is the social security number, 6 weeks of training. Here's a badge. Here's your weapon. Go on the street.
Right.
This is something I don't understand. My good friend of mine is in a training at the moment to become a police officer. It takes around 3.5 years, and his training includes. It's like a little law. If you want to become a lawyer's training, it's totally different. I don't understand why don't you? Yeah, but it's also, I don't know.
But you're right, Dennis. The education to become a police officer in Germany is quite well. But the problem starts when it's over, when you are in service. Yeah. And then you have several years, 5, 6, 7 years, where you have to do your service until you get in positions where you learn to get maybe extra courses, or where they are offered in generally at all, that you can, in my opinion, an officer should have a training every year of what psychology and de-escalation, etc. Concerns, and they should also be checked. If they are capable to do this job, also, and it has nothing to do to throw someone out of the job. It is just maybe this guy needs a rest. And then in this time he needs to relearn it or whatever is needed, but those guys in the police also need psychological help, in my opinion, support, and this is what is lacking here in Germany as well. This is why so many policemen are so frustrated here in Germany in parts. And this is exactly, I think, what we are seeing in the US for those cops. I want to also not say that all cops are assholes, but mostly seems to be like this. But for those, who are really, would like to do their service for the community, they are into this bubble as well. And they maybe have the best intentions, but they have no support, and all this should be changed,
Yeah.
I keep getting reminded of a story with my father when he was drafted to a special military unit that was in disarray. There was a lot of conflict in that unit, and they approached him and asked him if he could command that unit. And he basically gave them a condition, and that's that they would allow him to fire everyone and start over. And that's what he has done, is basically taken over the unit, he's fired everyone, and then re-interviewed everyone and took some of them back into the force. So I think that's what we need to do. We really need to completely restructure all of this and make sure that the bad apples don't get back into that batch.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. All right, we are coming to our next segment, and we are looking at the monuments, at the racist monuments, which are falling now, not only in America, but also in Europe. And I think it is, in the first part, it is crazy that those monuments are still around. If you look at this one, this is George Washington was beheaded, and I think he was later completely removed. I am not aware where it was, but I read that it happened in several states, that Christopher Columbus was removed. And there was also an incident quite interesting in the UK, in Bristol. There they had a slaveholder, Edward Colston, who was very popular in this town for a long, long time. And he was a slave trader. He enslaved, there are estimations, about 70,000 Africans, and deported them to the UK or to the Caribbean. And 20,000 of them did not survive the transport. So you can imagine how he dealt with human lives. And when he was back in the UK, he gave a lot of money for schools, for charity, etc. So he was a very honored man there. There was a controversy around him for a couple of years now, and the government of Bristol always said, no, we cannot remove him. He's part of our history, and blah blah blah. All this shit. And no, finally, the people of Bristol had enough, and they decided, okay, enough with this idiot, and they threw him into the harbor. Meanwhile, the government saved him, but I guess they don't dare to put him on the streets anymore. I think he will land in a museum, and I hope that he will get a little note which clarifies what kind of guy he was. And we saw the same in Belgium, where the statue of King Leopold II, who was only a big in slave trade at his time, was not longer, the people were not longer willing to see him in public, and he was also removed. It is a good sign. We see that on many levels, people are rethinking, people go into themselves, and they decide, no, the time is now. And maybe it has to deal with the times we are living, that so many things are in chaos. The coronavirus is still around, and as you know, in America, a high unemployment rate, etc. And all this also gives a good mix that people are feeling it is now the time to adjust things, and these are little parts, I guess, important little parts, but the right sign, in my opinion. You guys have anything to add?
My viewpoint is, okay, get them out of the public view, but put them in museums to remind people of the history.
Exactly.
So do not eradicate the history so people can learn about it. And I am fully for removing all these monuments and figures and so on, but preserve them, put them in a museum. People can look at them, learn from it, and hopefully don't repeat this. But we humans are stupid, so therefore...
Yeah.
I agree. They belong in museums, not on Main Street. But did you all see the video of the two white guys that were free diving down and trying to get that statue so they could take it home with them? It was just beyond silly and just like mind-boggling.
Yeah. And there was another incident which happened around this. There was they accidentally addressed Joe Biden, and this is slide 41 also. I'm jumping a little bit. Joe Biden, they were protesters. I can read it out quickly. There were rioters, and they threw a lasso around the top of the statue, Joe Biden, and were Googling how to tie a lasso and arguing for a while about how lassos are racist. And then they brought it tumbling down after graffitiing it all over it. Unfortunately, the old racist statue turned out to be the former vice president and current presidential candidate Joe Biden. Classic prankster, Biden said, chuckling as he dusted himself off. This happens from time to time. Back in my day, we are out at the community pool, hanging out and throwing rocks at each other, as was the fashion at that time. Corn Pop and I were dishing it out and running our finger through our leg hairs when, as he continued to drone on, though another racist group came up and toppled him the other way. Quite funny, I think, and it's not completely wrong, because if you see what Joe Biden in his history also stood for, it is not that unrealistic that someone mistakes him with such a statue.
There was a case recently also where not a case, but a play that was made about this doctor that was the one who actually created the cure for a fistula problem, which is has been bothering women very severely, and that's now, due to his work, is curable. Unfortunately, he did that on the backs of enslaved women, and this whole thing brings up this question of what does any good doing balance out the evil that they were doing. And the same with this guy who was a philanthropist. He helped certain poor communities. He built institutions with his fortunes. And so that has given him kind of like a protection because of that, because people were saying, well, he was a good guy. So the problem is it's not. If you're building your good works on the backs of someone and you're hurting anyone in that path, I think that kind of undoes everything good that you're doing with it.
You're raising a philosophical question, Amos.
Yep.
Exactly. Great. Okay, we are coming to our final segment, and as usual, we are coming to the good news. Really. And there I found Sarah Parchak. She is an American woman. She is an archaeologist, and she does her ecology from outer space. She with a sonde. I don't know what the expression in English right now is. She does it from outer space, and she tries sensors, exactly, by sensors, exactly. And she is also very into Egyptology, as it seems, because she knows a lot about monuments, and she knows very much about how to remove those monuments. And on Twitter, she gave advice because some people were already hurt, by falling monuments, and she gives a perfect manual on how to remove monuments. Or in this case, he started the tweet with obelisks in general, but it might be masquerading as a racist monument. She doesn't know, and you should. The tweet is below the video. You can check it out. She describes it in a very professional manner. She describes what to do and what not to do. Here, she clearly advises not to use ropes, but to use chains, because we are not BC anymore. We are in the modern times, in quotation marks, and it goes on. And it is quite funny there in this slide. We are seeing her description, what is to do step by step, and then she is pretty direct in what her intention is. She added a graphic also to this, how to do this, where to fix the rope, which would be the best positions, where to put on the chains, etc. And I think it is great that she's doing this, and it is a very funny way to protest and to show the true color for what she's standing for. And I love this. And you can find it, as I said, below the video, the complete tweet around it. Right. We are at the end of today's show, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a big fun for me. It was great to have Chanda here for the first time, and I hope not for the last time, Chanda.
No, I'll come back on.
Okay, cool. And I would like to thank you, and I'd like to thank Dennis and Amos, and also in the background, who we didn't hear today. What was going on? We completely let him out, else. I hope you don't mind.
No, they hear me all week long. This is probably refreshing not to hear Oz for once. And I just spoiled it for everybody. But hi, everybody in the chat. And I want to make a special shout out. Thank you, Al Walski, for your contingent donations to our efforts in independent media here at Uphill Media. Thank you.
Yes. And Oz, please tell us what's coming up next week, what we have in our program.
Well, I'm going to let Shanda do that because she is doing a lot of production work with me now. Thank you, Shanda. Can you give them a brief overview?
Yeah, we've got some great stuff lined up for this week. Of course, we have Savage Joy with the Unruly Hour that's going to premiere on Monday, but you can check her out tomorrow for an Unruly Brunch on the Accidental Activist with me, the Serious Blonde, Shanda Masta. And then, of course, we have the Daily Dive Monday through Friday. You got to check that out. Oz is always leading the show over there, and it's a great dive into what's just going on daily. Did I miss anything, Oz?
Yeah, Monday night is Joy's premiere, right?
Right.
And then Thursday, she's got a big interview coming up, but she's going to be primarily promoting a book that she's writing with Pat Cody, and I know that the gentlemen in here know Pat, Nate's Liver.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite well.
We're excited. We're all excited about that. So anyway, great show today, guys. Really appreciate it, and it's great to see you on there, Shanda. And I want Shanda back. Don't you guys hold her hostage, okay?
So this is why I wanted to talk to you after the show. No, don't worry. But I hope that Chanda will be regularly here in our program whenever she likes, and she's always welcome.
And I'll actually contribute next time. I was just really busy this week.
All right, cool. The better.
Don't worry.
Okay, guys.
Be happy.
Thank you for watching, and we all wish you to have a great weekend, and tune in next week for No Joke, and don't forget to the Daily Dive and all the other shows we have in our program. All right, we're going out with They Might Be Giants, Your Racist Friend. The title says it all.
Good choice.
Bye-bye.
This is where the party ends. I can't stand here listening to you and your racist friend. I know politics bore you, but I feel like a hypocrite talking to you and your racist friend. It was the loveliest party that I've ever intended. If anything was broken, I'm sure it could be mended. My head can't tolerate this bobbing and pretending. Listen to some bullet head and the madness that he's saying. This is where the party ends. I just sit here wondering how you stand by your racist friend. I know politics bore you, but I feel like a hypocrite talking to you and your racist friend. This is where the party ends. I can't stand here listening to you and your racist friend. I know politics bore you, but I feel like a hypocrite talking to you and your racist friend. From the kitchen to the bedroom to the hallway, your friend apologizes, he could see it my way. He let the contents of the bottle do the thinking. Can't shake the devil's hand and say you're only kidding. This is where the party ends. I can't stand here listening to